There's this really curious thing, sometimes quite painful, right at the heart of relationships. It's like you finally get something you've wanted for ages. Security, maybe.
Yeah.
Real affection, stability.
Yeah, the good stuff.
Exactly. And then almost the moment it arrives, you feel this really deep, almost physical need to just take it apart.
Why does that happen? Why does getting something genuinely good, like a real acceptance, suddenly feel like a threat, not the relief you'd expect?
Right.
So today, we're really diving deep into that, into the architecture of self-sabotage. We want to explore that core psychological puzzle.
Right.
Why is it so hard to take in real committed love if deep down unconsciously you feel you don't actually deserve it?
Our mission then is to kind of map out that internal collision. When the pain you already know, maybe loneliness feels safer than the vulnerability of actually being happy.
And we can use a story to unpack this. Let's talk about Dan and Sarah. They're about 3 months in. That point where things often shift from just dating to something more.
Right, the turning point.
They've done the romantic Paris trip. They've met the families. They're actually making plans for weekends way in the future. Looking on the outside, all the signs point towards this lasting success.
Dan's carrying something you can't see.
Exactly, an old wound deep inside, and it has the power to really shake everything he's building with Sarah.
So to get why his happiness feels so shaky right now, we have to go back, way back.
I have to look at the then to understand the now. Why does now feel so risky?
Okay, so what was the then for Dan? His childhood?
Well, what we understand is that it was marked by a real lack of emotional warmth. His mother, she was described as offhand, distracted. Her focus, her emotional energy, it seems, went mostly to his older sister. So Dan essentially grew up on what you might call it a pretty meager emotional diet.
Okay, but hang on. If he grew up, became an adult, got a good job, friends, seems to be managing life, okay. How does that old hunger from decades ago still have such a grip on his love life now?
Because that early experience forces you to adapt, psychologically, profoundly.
How so?
Well, think about it. A child who learns really early on that love might not show up, or if it does, it's totally unpredictable. You can't just live with that raw pain. You have to build something inside.
Like a defense.
Precisely. An internal fortress, maybe,
Right.
A character, a shield, whatever you want to call it. It's designed specifically to cope with being alone, with not getting that connection reliably.
So he basically had to teach himself not to need the very thing he wasn't getting.
He had to, yes. His deepest self had to kind of make peace with deprivation. And that character, that protective part, it's inherently skeptical. It doesn't see warmth and acceptance as gifts.
It sees them
as potential traps.
Right.
Vulnerability in that internal operating system feels like setting yourself up for abandonment later on. Guaranteed.
Wow. And that explains that really strange kind of heartbreaking pattern you sometimes see, where feeling rejected or maybe just kept at a distance, even though it feels bad, it's familiar, predictable.
It feels like home. It's awful, but it's known. You know how to navigate that landscape, the emotional unavailability, because that's where your sense of self was basically forged.
So Dan might have, in the past, actually gravitated towards partners who were a bit cold.
Or inconsistent.
Or demanding, yeah. Unconsciously seeking out relationships that mirrored his past. It confirms that defensive view of the world. See, love is unreliable.
And then Sarah comes along. And she's the opposite. She's genuinely available. She's really affectionate, consistent.
And that stability, it must feel incredibly foreign, maybe even deep down really threatening.
That's where the fireworks start.
That's exactly where the conflict ignites. When Sarah starts offering this intense, real affection, that's when the problems actually surface. It's not that he doesn't want the love, he desperately does. But his old defense system basically misreads the signal.
It can't compute.
It can't compute the sheer abundance of it, the plenitude. It's unconsciously destabilizing. It's incredibly hard to accept.
But shouldn't happiness make you feel safe? That's the logical thing. Logically, yes. But psychologically, for someone like Dan, that stability requires him to dismantle the very identity he built to survive being deprived. And that feels terrifyingly risky.
Too risky.
Way too risky. And there's this fascinating pattern that often emerges. People who've been deprived, when they finally get the genuine article they always craved, they can become, well, extremely fussy.
Fussy how?
Skeptical, critical, looking for flaws, even argumentative. It's like they unconsciously need to devalue the gift to lessen its power.
Right, to bring down the temperature, like we said earlier, the hopefulness. The sheer potential of this great relationship, it feels too intense, too high stakes.
Yeah, it's like standing on a cliff edge. Beautiful view, but terrifying. And there's this awful urge to just jump, just to end the tension of being there.
And they end the tension by crashing the relationship.
They initiate the crash themselves. It's a way to preempt what their defensive mind sees as inevitable, the other person leaving or failing them if they crash at first.
They keep control, even if it's catastrophic control.
A terrible, catastrophic kind of control, yes.
And we saw this play out so dramatically with Dan and Sarah. That dinner scene, take us there. Nice Italian restaurant, things seem okay.
Yeah, seemingly fine. Maybe they're just chatting about weekend plans or a book Dan finished, and then just boom, out of nowhere, Dan accuses Sarah of being sarcastic.
About his taste in books.
About his taste in books, yeah. And not just sarcastic, but like deeply disrespectful. It's a huge overreaction to something tiny, probably non-existent.
He finds this tiny, microscopic crack in how she said something, or maybe just imagines it.
Exactly, and then uses all the force of his past fear to blow it up into this massive canyon between them. Sarah, naturally, is completely confused. Maybe she tries to apologize, even though she doesn't know what for.
But he won't have it.
No, he digs in. He insists she isn't taking him seriously, that she's treating him like a child. He's not really arguing about the book anymore, is he?
No. He's arguing about his fundamental worth.
Precisely. And Sarah tries to handle it maturely, you know. She explains her side, says she genuinely doesn't feel that way. But Dan refuses to be calmed down. He's not actually looking for a resolution.
What's he looking for?
He's looking for proof.
Yeah.
Proof that she is flawed, that she is untrustworthy, that his defenses were right all along.
So he just crashes the whole evening?
Completely. The romance evaporates, dinner's ruined, they go home silent, weekend plans canceled. He might end up sleeping on the sofa. This massive breakdown, triggered by basically nothing external.
Nothing real.
Only by this overwhelming internal pressure, this need to confirm his fear.
We have to decode that, don't we? What's really being said underneath the argument.
Absolutely. The fight, it isn't really about sarcasm or books. It's an implicit cry, a desperate one coming from that wounded part of him.
The inner child.
The inner child, yes. Dan is effectively shouting, "You can't really love me." Not because Sarah doesn't, but because his mother's actions, or lack thereof, taught him that deep down, love, especially real, steady love, always comes with a catch, or it just disappears.
Okay, but wait a second. This sounds, well, it sounds incredibly selfish, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Picking fights over nothing, holding Sarah to some impossible standard. How do we know this isn't just bad behavior, immaturity? Is childhood trauma just becoming an excuse?
That's a really important point, and we have to be clear. This isn't about excusing hurtful behavior. It's about understanding the root. If it were just immaturity or being demanding, Dan would likely be using the argument to get something from her, manipulate her into doing what he wants, maybe.
Okay.
But here, he's using the argument to destroy something good. It seems almost self-destructive. It's driven by terror, not by a conscious desire to manipulate or gain something tangible. It's a psychological compulsion.
So there is a demanding quality to it, but it's coming from a place of panic, not malice.
Exactly. Panning. And that leads to the second part of that implicit cry. You don't love me enough. Or maybe you don't love me in the right way.
The perfect way.
The perfect way. He's searching for a kind of perfection in love that no actual human can deliver. And he uses Sarah's normal human characteristics, you know, her tone of voice, her opinions as weapons against her, as proof she's failing this impossible test.
But why is the bar set so incredibly high? It seems impossibly demanding.
Let's go back to that hunger idea. Imagine someone who's been genuinely starving for a long time, really deprived.
Okay.
When food is finally offered, they might not just be grateful for a decent meal. They might become fixated on the idea of a perfect meal, excessively idealistic, because the long period of deprivation has built up this fantasy of what satisfaction should feel like. Anything less feels wrong, untrustworthy.
So through all those years of emotional famine, Dan built up this fantasy of the perfect partner, the one who'd understand everything, never disagree, never say the wrong thing.
Exactly. The fantasy had to be perfect to sustain him through the reality of deprivation. So when Sarah shows up, and she's wonderful, but she's also, well, human.
She occasionally uses a tone he misreads or likes different books.
He seizes on that imperfection as fatal evidence. Proof that she's not the fantasy. Proof that this good thing is actually fragile and about to break.
So the fight's really about his fear. His terror of trusting something good that might still collapse.
Yes. He'd rather blow it up himself now, on his terms.
Than be surprised and devastated by her leaving later. which is what his past taught him to expect.
He maintains that illusion of control even though it leads to heartbreak. By crashing it himself, he feels like he chose the moment of rejection rather than having it inflicted on him again by an unpredictable world, like it happened all those years ago.
Well, so the key then, if Dan and Sarah, or anyone in this situation, want to break this cycle, it really comes down to understanding that link, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. It hinges on what's probably the fundamental insight of modern psychotherapy. The way you love now cannot escape passing through the gate of how you loved or were loved then.
The past shapes the present love life.
Inevitably. If love was distorted back then, if it was withheld, conditional, inconsistent, those distortions will show up in the present. Often as this kind of self-sabotage, that protective character you build for survival, it becomes the biggest block to your future happiness.
But just understanding
Yeah,
that feels incredibly powerful, liberating almost.
it is.
It changes the whole conversation, doesn't it? It shifts from, why are you being so difficult, or why are you hurting me, to something more like, okay, what old fear are you trying to protect yourself from right now?
And that is the path through the gate. There's really no other option. We have to understand our own histories, name the defenses, see the patterns they create. That's how we start to free ourselves from those sad limitations.
Recognizing it is the first step, the big step.
Often the hardest step, yes, but it's the key to rewriting that old script.
So we've really taken a dive into how those earliest experiences, our first blueprints for love, or maybe the lack of it, can end up dictating how we handle affection today, how we accept it or how we push it away. And that defensive fortress, that isolation built for self-preservation back when you needed it, it can become the very thing that stopped happiness from taking root when it finally shows up.
So maybe take a moment now just for yourself. Think about your own patterns when it comes to trust, criticism, accepting affection in your relationships. Do you see any echoes?
Echoes from the past.
Echoes from a long ago relationship, maybe with a parent that felt lacking, inconsistent, conditional. If so, what's the most important distortion from your past that maybe, just maybe, you need to finally name? To understand it and start to free yourself from its grip today.
Because naming
Naming that distortion is the only way to stop handing the veto power over your current happiness to the feels of your past.